What is crack-a-lacking, Hardwood Knocks listeners? I am Damp Valley coming at you without my fantabulous co-host, Adam Frommel, because it is a little bit after 4 in the morning Eastern time as I record this. I am delirious because I have not yet slept. And this is an IG YouTube exclusive, I think it's the second one we've posted. So you're one of the few listening to it. Congratulations, you've made it or something, maybe condolences because you're listening to this right now. Anyway, going to try to keep this short, sub 10 minutes, sub 12 minutes, whatever I'm aiming for. We're here because essentially the Golden State Warriors exist. Marcus Thompson of The Athletic reported that Steph, Dre, and Klay have communicated to the front office that they would prefer if they use the number 7 and number 14 picks in this year's draft on more immediate help. Bradley Beal is a name that cropped up in said report, whether it was a preference of the players or the Warriors in general. They would love to have Bradley Beal on the team. So many things here. Let's start with whether Bradley Beal is even available. He has maintained, for the most part, that he does not want to be traded from Washington or wants to at least stay in Washington. His end of season presser, he was a little bit non-committed about his future, but nothing concrete or sinister type was said that would make you think he was really angling to get out. The Wizards also reportedly aren't planning to shop him. That was per the Athletics Fred Katz, who reported that over or right at the start of the offseason. Something materially needs to change in Washington, I think, for Beal to become truly available. I don't think it's going to be the rest of the trade market. If this were a situation where Dame is readily available, where Siakam's readily available, where the Bulls have decided to shop Zach LaVine, maybe there's more of an urgency on the Wizards' behalf to make a decision here. But we know there will be another star/stars on the trade market this summer because that's always the case. Right now, though, if you're the Wizards, it's more so about trying to come to terms with the reality of your situation. You're not good enough to be a title contender as currently constructed. That doesn't mean you immediately have to trade Beal, but one or both of these two things need to happen. He just needs to commit to coming back. It doesn't have to be in the form of an extension. You can take his word for it, which is fine. He has a player option for 2022, 2023, which if he gets to that point, he's going to decline and will re-up longer term or sign a longer contract. Maybe it's not with Washington. But if he says he's coming back, that's enough justification for you to be like, all right, we're not moving you. That, or you need to make the swing, another all-in trade, a la what the Bucks did with Jrue Holiday, to prove that you're ready to win at a higher level, or at least trying to win at a higher level. Does Washington have the assets to do that? I don't know. Fringe lottery pick in this year's draft. Plus, you do have Rui Hachimura, Deni Avdija. They do have stuff, but I just don't know what that's going to necessarily get them. For now, though, it feels like if they do shop Beal, it's not about trying to beat out the rest of the market or necessarily because a Godfather offer came in, mostly because a Godfather offer is going to come in. This is Bradley Beal we're talking about. He only has the year left on his contract, but if you can get a top 20, top 15 All NBA player, you do it, and you're going to give up the whole kit and caboodle to get him. It's just about them trying to figure out where they're at and whether they can keep Beal or win enough to convince him to stay long term. From the Warriors side, this is just so, and I'm looking up Beal's age as my eyes just scroll over the screen. I always forget it for some reason. 28. From the Warriors perspective, why wouldn't you want all NBA type 28-year-old guard who does exactly everything you need, just fills the biggest void on your team, which is having another creator and another shot maker to make life a modicum of easier on Steph, which it has not been for 2 years. The Warriors offensive rating ranked in the 11th percentile without him in 2019, 2020 per Cleaning the Glass. And it was in the 3rd percentile this year when he wasn't on the court. In those stretches, they become even more reliant on mid-range shot attempts. More than 35% of their looks are coming from there. They're hitting their threes at a sub 35% clip overall, and they were sub 30%. Not this season, actually, but the season before that. You don't have the juice without him on the court. And even with him, sometimes he's only going to be able to carry you in certain lineups to a league average offense if you don't have another capable creator around him. You look at the team as currently constructed, and even with Klay Thompson coming back, never mind the fact that he's recovering from an ACL and an Achilles injury. self-creation's never really been his game. He can probably give you some of it, but then that's where these, missing 2 full seasons worth of basketball comes in, is can he do that? And then you look at the rest of the roster. I mean, Andrew Wiggins was second on the team in pull-up field goal attempts this season, and he and Steph were the only players on the team to average more than 3 pull-up field goal attempts per game. You need that extra guy in Bradley Beal. Some people might look at his efficiency this season and not love it, mostly because he was under 35% from 3. The degree of difficulty on his shots, though, is just absolutely absurd. He still hit above 38% of his catch and shoot threes this year, and he was at almost 47% of his pull-up twos. And so, he is going to get to his spots. He's going to generate his own looks. He's going to hit them at a high level. And the way he plays, it means shit. He can anchor lineups on his own. The year before this season, the Wizards had an offense that ranked outside of garbage time the 79th percentile of efficiency. They didn't have John Wall that year. Then you fast forward to this year when he was on the court without Russell Westbrook. Their offensive rating was comfortably in the 70th percentile. It was above that. So he does exactly what the Warriors need. This becomes, I think, to me, an issue of, well, first, he's probably the most ideal Warriors trade target that you can come up with. If we're sticking to the realm of reasonable possibilities, where it's, the Siakam's been mentioned by John Hollinger, also of The Athletic. Interesting. And he does give you some extra playmaking, but the shot making just isn't the same. We'll maybe give you that, he gives you extra pressure on the rim if you're the Warriors. But his shooting's been wonky since the Raptors 2019 title season. Damian Lillard, the better player. So yes, but insofar as you could get him, I think you have to look at cost and how much future equity that's going to cost beyond what we're talking about now, which would be the Wiseman number 14, number 7 filler special for Beal. So it's going to cost you more. Your defense gets worse in that scenario just because of Steph, Dame backcourt. It's going to be rough. Beal is not a great defender. He has shown in the past, though not so much these past 2 years, really, that he can turn it on. He's bigger than Dame, so he's just going to give you more resistance there anyway. It comes back more so to the cost. Dame's the better player, but given what you're going to need to give up to actually get him, Beal makes more sense. You're only acquiring if you know he's going to resign, but because there's only that year left on his contract, you are able to not lowball the Wizards, and there will be other teams available for Beal. There's a ton that we can just rattle off. The Warriors specifically, though, he's ideal for them. Just makes so much more sense on offense than Pascal Siakam. They don't necessarily need Siakam on defense. I would just be more concerned, though, about the Draymond Siakam fit on offense. LaVine would be kind of interesting here, and he's younger than Beal, and he showed. So if you know he's going to come back, maybe you view him as more of a bridge into the future to those post-Steph, Klay, Dre years. What gets interesting about that, Steph is age 33, Klay and Dre are age 31. You do have to factor that into whatever package you're giving up. The other team cannot or should not and will not care about that, but it has to be part of the Warriors calculus, which I'll get to in a minute. Just when it comes to LaVine, Beal's the better playmaker overall. LaVine's decision-making out of double teams got a lot better this year. I just don't view him as like this super net plus facilitator. And I think Bradley Beal is going to be a cut above there. He's also I think he's probably more of a proven shot maker at this point, which also just doesn't feel fair to say now that I think about it, because LaVine just hits tough off the dribble threes like they're layups at this point, essentially. So maybe comparable value there. And if you really bought into LaVine's youth, if he became available, I still think between Beal's facilitation and just looking at a guy who has anchored lineups without other stars and brought them to not just respectability, but we're talking decidedly above average offensive production, that matters there more. What are you giving up to get him? You need to send out, if you're the Warriors, a little over $27.5 million in salary to meet what he's going to be making next season. That essentially guarantees that you would need to give up Andrew Wiggins. If you were giving up Wiseman, number 14, and number 7, that gets you to, I think, like $18.2 million if you're trading this year's 2 draft picks as actual salary. So you could go that route, hope that Kelly Oubre Jr. would agree to a sign and trade, that the Wizards want him, that he's okay going back to Washington. That'd be a really funky reunion. There might be some merit to that, just because I don't know which team is going to give Kelly Oubre Jr. noticeably above the mid-level exception. And so if it's on a deal that pays him above that, and Washington looks at him and says, okay, he's a wing, can defend in theory, multiple positions, we're okay having him on the payroll for a couple of years. That would be the route to go. Mostly, though, you're probably looking at having to give up Wiggins. And then if you're also trading Wiseman with him, you're probably getting to the point where you have to take back other salary from Washington. Can you expand this? Maybe Washington won't want Davis Bertans money on the books if they're giving up a Bradley Beal, or is this just a situation where, okay, they have Gafford, they're getting Wiseman, you'll take back Thomas Bryant, who's coming back from an ACL injury himself. Should the Warriors give up that much, though, is the question. I think if you can figure out a way to do it without Wiseman and you're giving up more future draft equity, that might be more appealing, because if you still view Wiseman as that all-star talent, you still have that bridge to the future intact. And when you're dealing future draft equity with the Warriors, it gets so complicated because of the 2024 first rounder they're sending to Memphis. I think it's top 4 protected or top 6 protected or something. That gums up what they can send out. So you would have to do something that goes further out. Yeah, you could do 2022 as well. But if you want to give Washington real value, make up for players or just future equity in general, you go long term. It's pending the obligation to Memphis. And then you're also just in a situation where, wow, a half decade from now, when Steph would be 38, like what is he doing when Draymond and Klay would be 36, to have any part of your future mortgage when already part of it is mortgage? Just looking at that 2024 draft pick, it gets dangerous. Still, if you can keep Wiseman, you would have, in theory, that all-star level talent. And I think you look at Beal as an age 28 guy. Yes, on the older side, if you were rebuilding, but you could probably still count on him to be at least the second best player on a really good team for a half decade at this point, maybe even a little bit longer than that. At the same time, if I'm the Warriors, I'm probably more willing to give up Wiseman 14 and 7 and try to limit what you're giving up elsewhere for Beal, just because your timeline is so immediate. There's more danger, I think, in giving up picks into the distant future, including swaps, by the way. Like, that's how Milwaukee enticed part of the Drew Holiday trade with New Orleans, the Lakers with Anthony Davis in New Orleans, and then, of course, the Nets getting James Harden, basically just giving up the next 6 years of control of their first round picks. You don't want to be in that situation if you're the Warriors. You arguably didn't want to be with it if you were the Nets. The difference is that you have 3 top 15, 20 players now on your roster and 2 top 10 players in Harden and Durant. So it's an easier risk to take there. For the Warriors, it's just different because Beal is not on the same level as a Harden or Durant. And so you're still not having that same pairing there. I would be curious to see what Washington would want. Let's say they're making Beal available. I could see a path, even though Daniel Gafford's been good, maybe they don't want Wiseman. I could still be like, hey, let's just make the talent play here. He was just selected 2nd overall a year ago. You have number 7 and 14. Like, those are automatically gone. Are they demanding something in addition? If the Warriors are giving up Andrew Wiggins in that scenario, I'm sure there's pushback there, because while his $30+ million salary per year over the next 2 seasons is still a net negative, he's an asset to the Warriors. He's their most important wing defender after a healthy Klay Thompson, and he's probably going to take on even more difficult assignments relative to Klay Thompson, just with Klay coming back from those 2 injuries. If you trade him as part of a Beal trade, there's really just a talent vacuum in your wing rotation. You have Klay, and then it's like, okay, like who are you really trusting there? So that's something the Warriors would also have to consider. You have to be prepared to fill out your wing rotation more so on the cheap if you wind up giving Andrew Wiggins away. Still, I would come back to the fact that if it's Wiggins and all these immediate assets, including Wiseman, I do it if I'm the Warriors, because Beal's exactly what you need. And if you're not giving up all these swaps and actual picks, other than the Memphis one that we've already talked about, too far into the future, fine. And look, even if it's a situation where you are also giving up your 2022 pick and then swapping in 2023, you know what? Fine. Maybe 2023 is not so ideal. At the same time, Beal is still going to be good over the next 2 years. I think we can say safely that Steph is still going to be really good over the next 2 years. You're probably going to be a playoff team in those instances. If you do send out a lottery pick or swap, depending on what the protections would even be on a 2022 pick, it's not going to be like a really high one. And I would just assume there'd be some protections involved. So I think the goal here would be give up what you need to in terms of your immediate assets to make sure that you're limiting what you're giving up beyond a 2023 swap. Should the Warriors trade for Beal? Kind of still up for debate. I would say yes. Do they have the ammo to make Washington consider trading for Beal? I think that's really the question mark. There are other teams in theory that could beat out their offers. If you're looking at a New Orleans, if you're looking at OKC, obviously, which owns every draft pick from now until the end of time. just those teams might not be so ready to go into this all-in process. I think if Beal is going to become gettable for the Warriors to close this out, it's going to take a nudge on the part of Washington to ask him to commit to coming back. And if he doesn't, looking at trading him, or him specifically asking for it to happen. That being said, I think of all the players that you can envision becoming available this summer, he is the ideal get. He seems feasible, just given his situation with Washington. The crossroads they're at is implicit. He's in a contract year. That's just how this works. We've seen free agency now start to unfold with 2+ years left on player deals. So there's that to consider. What do you think? Let us know in the comments of, again, this IG or YouTube exclusive. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Hardwood Knocks wherever you get your podcasts. You should know we're on IG at Hardwood_Knocks. If you're listening to this on IG, we're also on YouTube. Are you listening to us on YouTube? Go to YouTube, search Hardwood Knocks. We're right there. Until next time, I leave you with a shout out to the one, the only, and as always, as ever, Frank Ntilikina.